Hello everyone and welcome. No doubt you're all aware of the ongoing situation in Sudan. For mobility teams, seeing events such as this unfold, particularly in a country where you have employees, raises all sorts of questions and challenges. I'm joined today by Yoshiro Fukuma, Regional Security Director for International SOS. Yoshiro is an experienced crisis manager supporting client organizations in making effective decisions and managing crises, including security evacuations. Welcome, Yoshiro. Good to have you.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
So, HR teams with assignees in Sudan will recently have had to address the issue of whether to evacuate their people from the country as the situation deteriorated. And when an issue like this first arises, what should HR teams take into account when considering whether to evacuate? What are the decisive factors that would lead to a recommendation to evacuate?
So evacuation decision making is very complex and perhaps the single most critical in an evacuation operation. So first, you need to understand your exposure. Organization need to understand where your people are and your exposure is and their profiles. Profiles mean, on the one hand, you'll have essential staff critical to continue to run your business at minimum viable level as per your commercial commitments from business continuity perspective. On the other hand, less essential or non-essential people, such as family members or short-term inbound travelers, for example. You also might have people who need extra care, such as children, pregnant women, people with disabilities, or people with medical needs or injured. This group of people, potentially vulnerable to a crisis situation, need to be prioritized in evacuation consideration. Now, once you have identified your exposure, you need to understand situational factors such as threat and hazards, such as interstate conflict or large-scale sustained social unrest, worsening security situation due to inability of law enforcement, or the lack of essential supplies and medical care following an earthquake or tsunami or volcano eruption, or large-scale blackout leading to citywide infrastructure failure, or outbreak of infectious disease, as we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's important to identify a set of triggers that will be early indicators of worsening security situation, and also to create an escalation matrix to be able to assess changes in situation and support decision making. And this needs to be tailored to your organization's activity and risk appetite. For example, a scholastic could be more risk averse than an oil and gas operator or international NGO.
Yeah.
Last but not least, logistical considerations. One example could be lack of mobility is a significant escalation trigger for evacuation. Evacuation by air is always a preferred means of evacuation, or sometimes only option, depending on geography. Airlifting evacuation can prove difficult in situations where access to airport is restricted or denied, and when airspace is closed. Route to airport can be also vulnerable, particularly in situation widespread civil unrest or conflict situation.
Great. And can you tell me a bit more about the practical issues that HR teams need to consider? So, for example, the destination that their people are going to go to once they are evacuated, and what's the on-the-ground support when they get there, and how to manage those family issues that you mentioned?
Sure. An evacuation operation is very, very complex, and the multiple factors should be considered. So the immediate question is where to evacuate? Where is my international safe haven? In general, international safe haven should be a politically stable location with an international airport operating in 24/7, with multiple transit options available, with access to high level of medical care available in the city, and generally visa-free or visa on arrival available for most of passports before taking your next onward flight to your home country. Once you know your safe haven destination, you need to secure your means of transport. That includes, of course, a flight option in case of airlifting. To book a flight or arrange a chartered aircraft. You need to be able to provide a list of passenger manifest with passport details for each evacuee. So HR team should keep those passport data up to date. Failure to this, there will be a delay in arranging the evacuation. And also check if those passports have validity at least more than 6 months. There are many other questions related to an evacuation, such as where do you intend to assemble your people? Who has assessed the security provision of those assembly areas? Do you have sufficient ground transport resources to move your people to the airport? Do you have a security escort provider agreement in place? What communication resources do you have? So organization must be able to give answers to those very, very practical issues and questions before a conduct of evacuation. In a crisis, we see often a significant resource scarcity that lead to increasing pricing of accommodation, ground transport, security, and those service providers prefer cash over credit card or bank transfer in such a chaotic situation. At the individual level, the evacuee also must bring their passport and essential documents within their departure kit. That should include, of course, food and water at least for 72 hours, given delays can occur at any stage of the evacuation process, such as sudden airspace closure, for example. I saw a few times some evacuees forgot to bring their passport or lost their passport during a road move and missed their chartered flight. Wow. And need to wait for the next available option. Those are to be, of course, considered ideally before a crisis happens, during peacetime, with a principle such as hope for the best, but prepare and plan for the worst.
Yeah, great advice. And you mentioned communication there, Yoshiro, which brings me to my next question, because again, for HR teams, when you have a situation like the one in Sudan where it's dangerous, there's going to be a lot of panic for employees and assignees. So what would you recommend with regard to communication? What frequency and level of transparency would you recommend HR teams utilize when they're trying to keep their people calm and let them know what's going on?
Yes. So setting up a regular communication rhythm with an evacuation leader on the ground is very, very important and necessary, not only to direct the conduct of evacuation, to bring a structure to it, but also to hear continuously the need of people on the ground and how the situation unfolds. And also to avoid unnecessary influence from misinformation, disinformation that evacuees are getting from social media nowadays.
Yeah.
In terms of a frequency, could be daily or twice daily or more, depending on how fast the situation is changing and how imminent an evacuation will be, or how significant the level of influence on evacuees' situational awareness from unconfirmed and non-verified information on the ground. It's also important that evacuee understand how their evacuation operation will be and what will be expected of them. They should know when they should move and when they should stay where they are, or where the nearest evacuee assembly area is, and how to get there, what to do in case of a loss of communication, such as landline or mobile network down. Those need to be clearly communicated through the daily interaction and through the evacuation leader. And most importantly, evacuees should be prepared to follow the instruction from evacuation briefing and comply with all the requirements the organization might need to impose upon them during the course of evacuation.
Great, thank you for that. And once the decision has been made to evacuate, can you talk us through what actually happens? Because I think this is something that not many HR teams would know until they actually have to deal with it. And it's quite an interesting area. So can you just talk me through what happens once the company has said, right, we need to pull our people out of this country?
Sure. While every crisis and the evacuation situation is unique, in overview, it will be in sequence. From your location to an evacuee assembly area, then moving from assembly area to the port of departure, from port of departure to international safe haven, from international safe haven to home country. So the Phase 1 is notification on the decision of evacuation and moving from your current location to an assembly area. So upon notification, evacuate to pack their affairs to move from their residence to an assembly area. It could be a pre-identified hotel, could be an embassy or residence of a country manager, for example. They will wait at this location until called for to a port of departure, could be international airport. They need to check if they have all the documents with them and if any medical needs. Then phase 2 is movement from assembly area to the port of departure. This often requires a pre-arranged ground transport and sometimes a security provider escorting the convoy. And then phase 3 is movement from the port of departure. So from airport to an international safe haven.
Right.
Once they are at the port of departure, they'll go through check-in process and they will move out of the country to an international safe haven. After that, evacuee will be further supported, should be further supported for local accommodation at safe haven, or assisted with onwards movement for repatriation to their home countries, or medical care or emotional support for those who require it. Throughout this process, in situation where the security situation preclude safe movement from one location to another, then all the evacuees should stand fast, shelter in place until the security situation cleared, and the evacuation can continue.
Okay, thank you. That's fascinating. So then finally, can you tell us a bit about how International SOS can support companies who need to evacuate their people at short notice? What support do you provide and how do you go about doing it?
So we support our clients across crisis and evacuation life cycle 24/7 in worldwide countries through our 26 assistance centers. So the first, we support decision-making and situational awareness through proactive medical and security alerts with actionable advice in 24/7 on any unfolding situation. So this includes evacuation advisories and its notifications. Those intelligence are available for both company management, but also to individual workforce through our digital platform and the mobile app. Second, our digital platform also helps clients in ascertain their exposure to the crisis situation and help locating and communicating with those people with impacted workforce through digital platform. Then once a decision to evacuate is made, our team arrange commercial or charter air evacuation, or sometimes land evacuation, as we did from Ukraine or from Sudan, as part of the process and the sequence I just explained earlier, including support arrangement of ground transport, secure escort, accommodation booking, medical advice and assistance, medical evacuation as well, of course, until client workforce safely return to their home country and to their. So throughout this process, our medical and security experts remain available 24/7 on call, supporting continuously risk assessment and advise clients in their crisis response operations. So our assistance center also help people to get access to necessary emotional support for the people affected by this crisis, virtual and in person.
Great. Thank you so much, Yoshiro, for joining us today. Some really fantastic advice and information there. I know I found that very interesting. I'm sure our audience will have done so as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to our audience, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.